Hello, everyone, and welcome to this recorded GLISA webinar, where we will be interviewing Dr. Carol Perryman, a faculty member here at Texas Women's University. Today, Dr. Perryman, or as she prefers to be called, Carol, will be introducing us to the brand new TWU Student Journal, which is edited by SLIS faculty. This journal is a great opportunity for SLIS students to have their work published in an academic journal. I'm Gabriela Palacios, the current Vice President of GLISA, and joining us is my fellow graduate student and GLISA officer, Carrie Foley, the current President of GLISA. So let's begin. Thank you, Carol, for joining us today. We're going to just jump right into some questions. Can you tell us what is the overall vision for the new TWU Student Journal?
Well, to give you a little background, I'm always impressed, not by every paper students do, but by some of them. And I find myself thinking, you know, I wish we had an outlet. I would like to see this stuff published. I wish we did more with research, especially, but other publications as well. And so semester before last, I had this really great paper, and I'm thinking, just needs, you know, this could be publication quality. And I started thinking about, and not for the first time, a student journal for SLIS. So that was the beginning of the idea. But pretty quickly, I realized that we need to sort of transcend the boundaries of a single department or a single idea. I reached out to Dr. Tamava, and it's actually not just SLIS faculty who are co-editors. There's 4 of us, because the other 2, one is Woody Evans, and he's the head of reference at the TW Library. And the other one is Adrienne Shapiro, and she deals with the open access repository. So the 4 of us, I brought them on board. We have the support of the TW Library Dean. We have the support of Student Research, the Center of Student Excellence, the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, and have reached out to faculty across campus. So now this is an opportunity for all of our students at TWU at all campuses to seek professional level publication. But right from the start, I didn't want this to be, and I didn't know, I've never worked with student journals before. I have co-edited 2 other professional level journals, both in my area of medical librarianship, which is quite the adventure. So I had no idea what I was doing, to tell you the truth. But we started out open access. Adrienne has been the one who led the construction of the site, which I'd be glad to share with you, and learn from others, such as San Jose State University, which has a student journal. It is run entirely by students. All of the functions are done by students, with the exception of 1 or 2 faculty advisors. So our plan is to make it be that way. I want to see students involved in that level of scholarly communication, doing the peer review, doing editing, doing the media publication on Twitter and whatever. So all of the elements of that, you know, we're just at the start. We've in fact just put out our first issue. I'm really proud of, but you know what? We have no SLIS authors in there. I want to change that. Hey,
we want to change that too.
Yeah.
A little bit more about the submission process. How do we actually get our work into this journal?
So what you can do, and I'd like to go ahead and share that page if that's okay. Let me make sure that it'll come up. Yes, okay. Here, let me just minimize this part. Okay, here's our landing page, which actually you could just type in TWSJ, or I can copy this into our chat. Oops, can I do that? Well, yeah, here we go. Okay, there's the link. And you can see here that you can make a submission. So you can just make a cold submission, or you can contact one of the co-editors for more information. And here's what else I haven't really said yet, and that is, aside from the fact that we want this to be a student-run journal, we do recognize that students don't have the experience at scholarly publication, and that's something that they might want to do in their career. So we are actually individually sort of shepherding, that's what we call it, both co-authors and single authors into publication. So we do much more of a hands-on process. We will work with you one-on-one to help make your publication better. Now, of course, not everything that's submitted is going to get published, but we have worked, for example, with students for whom English is not a primary language. We have worked with students who've never published, which of course is going to be most everybody, and we can help get published. I just want to show you this image here. I don't know if I can blow that up. It'll see if it'll blow up. Nope. This is actually a student photographer, so I really want this to be very student centric. So that was, we hope to be changing the cover art with student work. And ultimately, we've had conversations, by the way, about including creative writing. We're kind of on the fence about this right now. But hey, I say try it, whatever. We'll take a look and talk about it. So our first issue is right here. And some information about the journal. We've got advisory board members, and we're in the middle of growing that advisory board. One of the important things about the advisory board, and of course, wait a minute, oops, excuse me, PDF. Tell me if this is following me. Zoom doesn't always do that.
Yes, we can see what you're
Thank you. Okay. So here's Ashley Bender in the English department. Diana Elrod, she's the head of student research. Jorge Figueroa, Associate Dean of Research at Cope, but he actually has just moved over to a new role. And Holly Hanson Thomas is the Vice Provost for Research and Innovation. So we deliberately initially sought out the highest level support we could find that was involved in supporting student research and publication. I feel like it's really important for us to learn by doing about getting champions at every level and from every department, especially since, by the way, none of us has any expertise in science. I don't. I'm a medical librarian, so I can talk that talk. But none of us knows the hard sciences. None of us knows many other things. So we want to get graduate students and faculty involved as champions in the different departments. And they can help us, perhaps, especially with peer review of research writings that I can't evaluate. You know, if you look at some of this, it's in the area of biology. I can't assess that. So we actually had a faculty member in that department help us. But so I hope I answered your question, that we're here to help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what would be the timeline for getting an article published in the journal?
Well, we just put out our first issue, and it's always hard to tell because right now we're trying to solicit more manuscripts, which is really an uphill battle right now. Part of it, of course, is getting the word out. We only put out one issue right now. Our plans are just to do at this point just one issue per year until we get some additional people on staff, students, in other words, and then we can talk about what is ideal with such a publication, which is that you always have things in the pipeline. So let's say you submit tomorrow, you may not get published until our next issue, which I'm just going to guess is like, we hope August. So because what you do is you submit it, and then it's assigned to somebody who serves as a shepherd. We do editorial review. This is not blinded peer review, but we do blinded editorial review, meaning that, well, I would be shepherding, I mean, I'm actually doing that for a group right now. While I would be shepherding it through the process and meeting with them individually to help improve and edit the work, others would also review it blind. They don't know who submitted it. And then they give feedback. So then you're given that feedback and you respond to that as you edit your work. And also let us know, I've accepted this suggestion for change, but this one, I don't think that it was clear, or I've already said this elsewhere and maybe you missed it, you know, so you don't always just agree with a peer review comment, but you do have to respond to it. So then we do a follow-up review to see if you've done what we asked you to do or otherwise it's justified. And then it goes through layout, and then you're sent another copy to look at to make sure that what we've got is what you want it to be. You know, we get information from you about your author information so that somebody can connect with you. And then we put it in with the other articles that would be going into the issue. So there's a number of steps that people don't see, and it's every step of the way, kind of like information retrieval, demands your thought, critical thought. Sometimes the question is one of, is this the kind of quality that we want to publish? And I won't lie to you, this is a selective process. So there are things that we do turn down, but we are at a place where we're much more interested in assisting student publication than we are acting as gatekeepers, you know? So we talk about publishing research, by the way, too, but I want to clarify something there. This is not strictly a research journal. And I've suggested that students, for example, who are working on a grant proposal idea, that they may want to develop into an actual project in a library, even if that library is a made-up library. That's actually a proposal for a project, right? A project proposal. And it actually can be a really quality publication. So I'd like to be able to expose the rest of the community of TW and beyond and above and all that to the kind of work that library science students are doing. Now, as we think about social justice, things that you may have developed, you know, I don't think, for example, that the collection development spreadsheet would be a good option. I'm looking for something that is more in a sort of narrative format, you know, because we do ask you to do an abstract, an introduction, a background, lit review type of thing. But it's not big R research usually.
That's good to know. So
Yeah.
another question that we have then, how many times can your work be published in the journal? Can you submit more than one thing at a time?
Yes. Yes. There's no limit to that. And we haven't encountered that yet, so I could be lying. I mean, if you start sending in 15 things at once, we may be having a problem. And what we would actually do with another journal I worked with, somebody broke down her dissertation and submitted what looked to me like mini articles written from that dissertation for publication. There were maybe 12 articles, and they were lousy. They were really lousy. So I'm just being honest here. What we did is, at that point, it really was editorial review as a sort of gatekeeper function, and I was in that role. So I looked through this one at a time. I corresponded with the author, and I said, you know, we can't put all these through the pipeline at the same time. We're just going to start with one. We'll give you some feedback, and we'll make a decision. The decision was that we would not publish her work. That came later. I don't like to be the one to say that, but you do, you know.
So big question then, why should students consider publishing their research or going through this rigorous process?
Well, for one thing, how much do you understand about the scholarly communication process or about journal publication, especially in an open access journal? What do you understand about it? I think this is a new area of practice for librarians. And for librarians in practice, particularly those who would be working in an academic setting, but also for those in public libraries or whatever. I mean, the stress is on you to begin to disseminate what you do and what you learn so that we're not all inventing the wheel all over again every time we do something. So a student journal publication is a safe environment for support that you would get in having that experience. At the same time, it's a great line to have on your CV. This is an editorial, peer-reviewed. It is going to be, I mean, right now, I think, I could be lying here, that it's findable in Google. And if we continue to publish and publish a certain amount of things, it will eventually be indexed in some databases too. So that's a pretty respectable thing that you can talk about for whatever it's worth, impact factor, you know, like that. And you can find yourself cited by people across the world, which is pretty cool. You know, and in some cases, some of the things people publish, especially some of the stuff I've seen at GLISA, it's news to people outside of our discipline that librarians are involved and interested in some of these areas. For example, helping people who are currently imprisoned, reaching out to people in rural environments, getting involved in healthcare in a different kind of way, working with populations during COVID. Low literacy patrons. You probably have done some papers that you thought were very cool. Social justice, you know. So why should you think of doing this? It feels really good to be published. It does. It's fantastic. In fact, the process of writing and editing, and yes, the whole sort of pain in the neck part of it, and the ego blows when somebody comes back with some criticism, those are growth, right? I mean, somebody comes back and says, oh, you know, this really gently, they say, this is not really maybe saying what you hope it says. So the process of going through that whole series of steps is really instructive and helpful to you. And once it's out there, it's just like, oh, okay, you're going to feel several different ways. The first way I felt with my first publication was, oh God, I can't look at it. Look at that error. And the other part is like, I can't believe I did that. It feels like I was able to find some kind of intellectual wall and go, oh, that's there it is, you know. And so you're actually exploring the limits of your own intellect and creativity, your thought process, your ability to write, you know, toward the goal of clarity in written communication. I can't say too much about that. It's pretty cool.
Thank you, Dr. Perryman. We had more questions, but I feel like you've answered quite a few of them in the process.
Fantastic.
Carrie, did you have any more questions? Anything else you can think of that others might want to ask about this publication?
I don't think so. I think you might have mentioned this, but just to clarify, you mentioned that if someone is interested in submitting, they can obviously go to the landing page you provided, but also contact a team member, one of the editorial staff directly to get further instruction.
Who will probably most likely direct you to the submission. But it's okay, because I am in contact right now with two people I'd encourage to submit. So they're just at the point where they're ready to actually submit it after some feedback from me initially. But we can actually do that once you've submitted, and then we can assign you a shepherd, you know? So myself and Dr. Tamava are the people who you would contact at GLISA. No problem with that. But there's also no problem with directly submitting it. And don't be surprised to hear back from one of us saying, hey, you know, I'll be working with you. And thank you for thinking of this journal, which we're so proud of and a little nervous about, you know.
Actually, I did have another question,
Yeah.
Dr. Perryman. So you said that it doesn't have to just be strictly research. What do you mean? Are we allowed to submit op-eds about library trends or other things like that?
You know, I'd really love to see something like that. So what I'm going to be looking for, of course, is something that actually has something to say and that is well supported by evidence. When I talk about not necessarily needing to be an actual research study, I mean, you do not have to actually have performed a research study and then written up the findings. You could be talking about a prospective study, your thoughts about doing one. You could be thinking about a trend in our field where you've explored it and maybe looked at some of the literature about it, so you're summarizing it. I think there's a number of things it could be, and that's actually a really good reason for contacting one of us, because if you have an idea that you think might work, but you're not sure, contact me, contact Dr. Smava. You know, Woody Evans at the library, as I said, he's the head of reference. He's a great guy. So is Adrian Shapiro, and all of us have worked one-on-one with authors for for our first issue. So we love that kind of conversation, by the way. So don't hesitate to reach out.
And another question, how much of a word count are we looking at for a typical article?
You should be able to find that stuff on the website. Let me see if I can find it offhand. Hang on, I'm not sharing the screen, but I am looking. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share that quickly here. If you go to information for authors, and this is also that main landing page. So this is information for authors. This is where we are. So you need to register with the journal with your TW email because we are limited to TW students. And that means, by the way, up to 2 years after you graduate, you are still eligible to submit work to this journal for publication. You can submit anytime. You asked about the words, and it talks about what we're going for. Here, it describes what you should have in a sort of full-length article. Other types of articles, probably like the ones you asked about, I think it's going to vary, and that's why it's a great reason to reach out to one of us, because we'll talk about it and get back to you. So an abstract, if you haven't written that, we actually can help you. There's an example here, 1,500 to 3,000 words. By the way, we're kind of flexible on that. We don't have a nailed down style yet. So this is kind of what we want. Hopefully it's clear, but if not, we do need to know because we're still developing our policies and procedures and things like this webpage with instructions. We don't know if it fits every type of publication that somebody might want to submit. So we really need to know what we're dealing with, especially since, we just had our first issue done. So it talks about how we evaluate. And those are based on, I'm really interested in critical evaluation of information and literature. So these rubrics for review are evidence-based practice for evaluating. For example, if you state something, do you support it? So you should find more here. As you can see, it's a Creative Commons. So, and there's Adrian, that's her email. What else? Stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you. That was a really helpful page to look at. That gives me a much clearer idea of what we would actually be submitting.
Yeah, and anybody can reach out and get a little bit of a tour. And if you have specific questions, remember, we're going for recruiting people to help us create this journal ongoing. And right now we're talking about doing a webinar or two to talk about the peer review process and scholarly communication. We haven't done it yet because we were thinking about funding, but we want to start people out dealing with us as peer reviewers so that you would come in and working with one of us, you might learn how to peer review a publication, and you would learn some of the mechanics, background, kind of how sausage is made of this journal, because there's a lot to learn and it could be quite interesting to you. Who knows, you may discover a really strong interest in open access publication. And you have to take advantage of Adrian, who is super knowledgeable and has been involved in the open access repository. These are some key areas of development as well in library practice, especially in academic librarianship. Kind of the wave of the future, that is libraries in a way creating their own publications, right? It's kind of the next step.
Okay, well, great.
Yeah,
It sounds exciting.
It's yeah, and kind of scary, and think, oh God, what have we started? It is
Definitely an
exciting.
opportunity for the students here from the
Yeah.
library school at TWU. Okay. Was there anything else from you, Carrie? Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Perryman, and explaining all about the TWU Student Journal. We look forward to seeing if others would like to submit their work and working with the faculty to get ourselves published.
Terrific. And thanks so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it.